Joining me now from Paris is Gérard Araud, former permanent representative of France to the United Nations. And in Berlin is Sevim Dağdelen, member of the German Bundestag and deputy chairwoman of the German-Chinese Parliamentary Friendship Group. Thank you both for coming on the agenda. Now, Sevim, I'll start with you. De-risking, decoupling, these have been the buzzwords, haven't they, of this visit. Premier Li was quite critical of the EU's call for de-risking supply chains. He said, you depend on me and I depend on you, when he was at a dinner in Paris. How might this face-to-face conversation and meetings that he's been having in Europe change the relationship between China and Europe?
Well, first of all, Premier Li is right to point out the close economic ties between China and the European Union. So the volume of trade between European Union and China is around 700 billion euros. And China is the European Union's most important trading partner. The European Union and China therefore have a common interest in good economic relations. And Premier Li's statement is, of course, flattering towards the European Union. After all, the European Union's dependence on imports from China, with a share of over 22%, is much higher than China's dependence on the European Union, with an import share of just about 10%. So worsening trade relations, which would inevitably be the result of the strategy currently being prepared by the European Commission, would therefore harm the European Union member states disproportionately more than China. And China has risen in a very short time to become the world's second largest economy and one of the most important diverse drivers of technology and innovation. So I find it extremely worrying that currently in Europe, under the cover of so-called de-risking, there is an increasing focus on a controlled decoupling, actually.
Gérard, is that how you see things from the French perspective?
First, let's be frank. Of course, the Europeans are closer to the United States than to China. We have democratic values in common and we have a common history. But, and that's very important, at the same time, of course, China is not an enemy. China is a partner, China is a competitor, and we have, in a sense, to set the terms of this competition. And the terms of this competition really have changed with the COVID. You know, the COVID crisis has shown that we were depending on international trade in some areas, and like for a power like the European Union, it's not really, it's a problem. It's a real problem. So we have to find the right balance between cooperating, trading with China and with the United States, by the way, but also we have to not to depend too much on our competitors and on China in these terms. So that's the meaning of de-risking. But you know, China is de-risking on its side. The United States are de-risking on their side. You know, the COVID crisis has shown that globalization has also negative aspects. You know, we, the Europeans, suddenly we discovered that we couldn't get masks, really the simple thing as a mask, because everything was coming from China. And it's the same thing with the medicine. So that's nearly, in a sense, an adaptation of the new reality of the world. We have to work with our competitor, and China is not an enemy, but a competitor.
Sevim, Premier Li went to Germany to talk about trade, to talk about climate action, to talk about Ukraine. And he talked very much of the importance of carrying forward the traditional friendship with Germany. What does that mean to you?
First of all, it is a really great sign of hope that with the visit of Premier Li and the 100-headed delegation from China, the direct German-Chinese government consultations have taken place again for the first time in 5 years. What is needed is not less, but more cooperation with China, not only economically and politically, but also in science and culture. We have deep, deep relations in science and culture with China. Chancellor Olaf Scholz should put an end to the really chaotic, sometimes chaotic discussions in his own coalition, in his own government, and finally pursue a clear policy in the interest of the German population. So we must do everything possible to ensure that the forces of reason prevail over those who want to play political roulette and work toward destroying the German-Chinese relations.
It's interesting you're talking about the real importance there of cooperation, and you highlighted that economic cooperation is somewhere where things are moving forward. So I'd like to bring you in, Gérard, because in Paris, ahead of the summit on the new global financing pact, Li attended a signing ceremony of a non-binding agreement between Airbus and China aviation industry partners. So these business deals are really quite significant, aren't they? I wonder what you think deals like that mean for China's relationship with France and with other EU nations.
You know, the world is a small village. The world is a globalized village. And as I have said, it's obvious that China, the European Union, the United States, and the rest of the world have to work together. And this agreement between Airbus, which is not a French company, which is a European company, where Germany is playing a big role, and China is, of course, a positive element. You know, we don't have to talk in sort of two terms possible, you know, confrontation or cooperation. There is also competition. We are competitors. We have to accept it, and we have to manage it together. So that's the reason why the visit, and I do agree with Madame Dagdelen, is what is very important is to have a dialogue, a political dialogue. So the visit of Prime Minister Li is critical, and we should have a lot of these types of visits.
Somewhere where there might be some positive cooperation as a direct result of this visit might be action on climate change, because that was very much a key focus of the discussion. The slogan, after all, was acting sustainably together. So, Sevim, where do you see China and Germany working more closely together in this area? I mean, Germany used, of course, to be the global leader in solar power equipment, a mantle which has now been passed to China.
Well, first of all, I just want to say something about Mr. Araud's statement. The thing is, of course, in a globalized world, not everything is easy. But the problem is the West is approaching now to deglobalize. And that's the problem, what we are facing at the moment. And as you mentioned, the solar and the solar power equipment, it is not China, first of all, that is responsible for the destruction of the German solar industry, which is mentioned sometimes by some German politician. But it is the German government of Angela Merkel, the former Chancellor of Germany, with its cutbacks in subsidies, which incidentally have also cost around 100,000 jobs in the solar industry in Germany. So in 2010, the German solar industry was still a global leader. And today, the German government is even letting go of the only major solar cell manufacturer in Europe. This is the company called Meyer Burger, a Swiss solar company with production site in Saxony-Anhalt, so it's in the east of Germany, which is expanding its production now to the United States as a result of the economic war against Russia and US subsidies. So in the area of sustainable industrial policy, there is a great need and great potential for cooperation with China, which focuses on climate change and maintains production capacity in this country.
We're talking about that need for cooperation with China. Premier Li told business leaders that was the biggest risk to the future, a lack of cooperation. So how much of a concern and how likely is that, Gérard?
You know, it's what is the difference that we have between with the Cold War between USSR and the US is, and you're right to refer to climate change, we have global concerns which are really very global. I think the United States, Europeans, Africa, China, we are all really facing the same challenge, climate change. So it's a good example where the Europeans, could be a sort of go-between between the United States and China by really, in a sense, pushing forward a bold agenda on climate change. But there are other issues which are issues of concern for the humankind, beyond China, beyond the US, beyond Europe, where we should work together. And again, Europeans in a sense, between the US and China could be a bridge to avoid this confrontation to become dangerous. We could work on the future of oceans. We could work together on the problem of cryptocurrencies, about terrorism, and a lot of issues. So again, the Europeans, we have a specific voice, and we have specific concerns. And as I have said, we are very close to the Americans. We are talking to the Chinese. We should, in a sense, defend our values and defend our particular vision of the world. There is a European voice, and it should be heard in Washington, D.C., and it should be heard in Beijing.
Gérard Araud, Sevim Dağdelen, it's been great talking to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.